Okay, so it is in every book, every study guide you have read, whether you're using TDC or APGAR or social work exam services, it is in there. It just doesn't look this way. So that may be what's confusing you. Okay, so if you're an older social worker, who went to school a few years ago, we didn't teach this model. This really didn't come into place until after 9/11, and we saw a lot of school shootings. So we came up with this crisis intervention plan. Somebody, what is the goal of the crisis intervention plan?
To see if the client is in an immediate crisis.
Ooh, that's not the goal though. What's the goal of the overall goal at the end of the plan? Good answer
To,
though.
Oh,
to
to
bring
bring
them
them to
back, to bring them back
stabilize.
to their normal functioning.
You got it. To return them to the prior state of functioning. If they were homeless and in an abusive situation before, that's our goal, is to take them back. We're going to refer them out to somebody else, but our goal is just to return them to where they are at. So this is whether you are in a domestic violence situation, a school shooting, a suicide attempt. These steps are all the same. And yes, there's a sample test out there that looked at using those exact words. So the first thing you're going to do, and all of this really takes about 10 minutes. We're not talking about, hours and hours of crisis. And if you've had me before, I tell you that our code of ethics says that we are supposed to we are supposed to be part of the community. We're supposed to, if there's a crisis in the community, we are supposed to be involved. I take that to heart very much so. And my children will tell you whenever there is an accident in front of us or any place near us, I'm there. That's what I do. Not only am I crisis trained, I'm a crisis trainer. So I do a lot of accidents. The worst one I've had, and if you've heard me already, I've shared this with you, but the worst one I had was I had about a few years ago, a Pepsi truck driver, 18-wheeler, slammed into a little bitty car. Happened right in front of me, and the car turned, and the driver slammed in the car. The car skid several feet, and she died. At the time, we didn't know that. So everybody stops, gets out of the car. They run over to the car to make sure the driver is safe in the car. That blood and guts are not my expertise. Sorry, that's just not what, not me, not my expertise. I did go to the truck driver. Okay. So what I did first of all is, are you hurt? Are you hurt? Are you okay? That's that plan and conduct crisis biopsychosocial assessment. I'm not taking a sheet of paper out and getting his whole history. It's, are you hurt right now? Are we safe? Let's get out of the middle of the road so a car doesn't hit you. Basic that. The second step was establish rapport. Hi, I'm Pam Turner. I'm a therapist. Let me help you through this. Okay. We talked about kind of, who I do, what I do, and some of the stages of a crisis, and he kept saying over and over again, I didn't mean to, I didn't mean to, I didn't see her. And he didn't. He didn't. I witnessed the accident, but I'm not trying to be on his court law side. I'm not going there. I'm just about making sure he's safe. So we called his company. We called his wife. His phone was in his hand. His hands were shaking so much he really couldn't even get it. And this is a few years ago before phones were like highly locked. So, I just kind of looked through his phone and called his wife and called the people, and really I had him sit on the grass because I don't know if he was physically hurt. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not trying to be a doctor. I am just trying to find that emotional support that we need in a crisis. Identify the last dimensions or the last straw of the crisis participant. This one was, this is very clear. He was on his way at the end of his shift. It was a Sunday afternoon on his way. I don't think he was speeding. Again, I saw the accident. She just turned in front of him. So we talked about, yes, accidents happen. And I'm sure that, this was not purposeful, all those good things. We don't explore emotions until stage 4. And for most of us in this field, that's unusual because the first thing we say is, how are you feeling? Are you okay? So it wasn't exploring emotions. So you know what? At this point, he felt pretty numb. And I said to him, I bet this is very surreal. You feel like you're really numb. but it'll be okay. And he's talking to me. He's like, I'm worried about losing my job. And at this point, I don't think it had even sunk into him that she did die, but he didn't know that at this point. So he wasn't even there. And I definitely wasn't going to bring it up, that she died. Generate and explore alternative resources. So again, his wife was on the way. The company was on its way. He really had nothing to do but to wait to get to the police got there. Develop and formulate an action plan. The goal was that everybody else was on their way. The police would be here. They would take a report. I gave him my business card. And, once the police got there, I left and suggested that if he needed anything else to call me. And not to call me for therapy, because in a crisis intervention, the goal is I can refer him to places if he needs something. I'm not there to testify. I'm just there to get him through that crisis. Okay? So that's what that looks like in the real world. Okay, and that is a crisis intervention plan. So in the question, when you see a crisis, it's going to ask you to take you through those 4 steps. Does that clarify that?
Yeah, thank you.
So most of you know that I really, really am not a huge fan of the acronyms. Nothing personal. I just don't have room in my head for I just don't have enough brain cells. Gosh, I don't. But I do really believe that everything we do follows what we were taught in day 1. So this is the social work helping process. Day 1, this is what we were taught to do. Before assess, though, there's something that goes there that's not written on this page. Before we assess, what do we do?
Engage.
Establish rapport, get to know the client. Okay. And there's a sample question, a couple sample questions about, the one we had this week. We're working on the 15-year-old girl, and you knock on her door and she says, I don't want to tell you anything. And of course, I'm the social worker. I can write this out and I can say client refused to engage, and I can call her PO and have her lock back up tomorrow. But is that helping anybody? She's 15. She's a pain in the butt because she's 15. That's normal teenage behavior. So what I really want to do, and a response to that was self-determination. Remind her, you are right. You sure do have that choice. That is a choice you can make. And if you choose not to respond, that is just fine. Okay? So then I'm going to assess. What are some of the words I look for when I see assess?
Explore. Determine.
Discuss. Any of those things. And again, if you've had me before, I apologize. I use the same analogy. But if I have a headache, I go to the doctor tomorrow morning and I tell him I have a really bad headache. It's lasted for 2 weeks. And he says, okay, let me go ahead and schedule you for brain surgery. Hasn't he missed a couple of steps in between? Give me an MRI. Give me a Tylenol. Come on. There's a couple of steps in between. So remember that when you're looking at the questions, there are very few actual tests that we actually get to the intervening schedule. Most of us really kind of stop when it comes to, it's usually just assessment and planning. Remember, when we plan with the client. It's never our decision. Self-determination works there as well. And before I engage any of that, what's that one thing I do first? Very, very first thing. I walk into a room and I see a client. What am I going to check for?
Safety.
Yes, safety. Okay. So I'm going to make sure he's safe. I'm going to engage. Those engage questions are the ones that have the feelings. Client is so upset they can't talk to you. The client is angry. Any of those things, I'm going to assess first. Okay. Assessment is an ongoing process. We always know that. And then we'll plan, intervene, evaluate, and terminate. Okay. Any questions overall of how you answer the questions? I think for most of us that you're struggling to find out what the question is looking for. What are they asking you? What they're asking you is, given this specific situation, based on your skills and knowledge, what would you do? Okay. A first question is almost always an assess, right? So you'll find very few first questions that are always assessed. We just really want to read the question. Do not go, even if you know the question, don't just choose that and keep going. Read the question, and what I always say is prove it. Prove it to me. Show me in that question why you know that's the answer.
Excuse me, Pam.
Yes.
Oh, what's about next question? Do you treat it as the same as first?
I usually, well, okay, those are different. I usually treat them as a first because after they've done this, what am I going to do first? Okay, but I have to read like what they've done prior to before, but I often treat that as a first. I'm always going to assess. Okay, even if it's a best question, we know that one or more of those questions is correct, but I still treat that as a first.
Pam, when you're
Yes.
the next question, when you're answering the next question, is it the next thing that the social worker has done, or is it next? Are we looking for? Are we looking at what the client has done, or should we look at what the social worker have done?
It depends on the question. Because some of those questions will clearly say, Mary Jane said to the social worker, blah, blah, blah. What should the social worker's response be? So I have to make sure that I'm responding to whoever asked me. Okay. And I think sometimes when we get caught in those acronyms, we really get caught in like, this is what we do, but everybody's situation is very, very different. Each case is different. And that's what they're looking for, that you know how to figure it out, not just follow some very routine plan, because that's just not how it works for us. Who's not muted? And I hear your dog. He's cute and all, but gotta be muted. Okay, so you are the very best social worker, right? Yes, always, always the very, very, very best social worker. Very best. You very rarely refer out because you are the best. Okay? So we try to really make sure that when I refer out, it is just because it is the last straw. I'm sorry. When I refer out, it's because I am out of my realm. That's the only time I'm really going to send out, is because I'm out of my realm of practice.
So what do you do, Pam, if like you get a question on the test? I said, what do you do if you get a question on the test that is like, oh, a client like tells the social worker that like sexual things and stuff like that? Are you still just supposed to go to your go to your supervisor, or are you supposed to refer out?
Go to your supervisor. You do not refer those out. You are the very, very best. So, sometimes the question will say, ask the client why he's feeling that way, or ask him to explain more. But if it's making you extremely uncomfortable, you go to your supervisor. That's what they're for. Any feelings in this relationship that are uncomfortable, whether it's countertransference, transference, anger. He said something that makes you angry. He has racial thoughts and epithets that you don't like. And it doesn't have to be transference, just feelings in there that are uncomfortable. That's when you seek supervision. If you are young or new, then supervision is fine. So if the question says you have a very heavy caseload, and you have many cases and you're not sure what to do first, if you are a student, an intern, or if you are new, then it's fine to go to the supervisor. If you are not, then you have to partialize and figure it out. Remember, you are the very, very best it gets. And truly, look at it. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah. So what if like value conflict? I always get confused. Like if a gay or lesbian comes to you for treatment and you're against that, do you transfer?
Oh no, you don't get that option. Your feelings don't matter.
No.
Sorry. You don't get that option. Nope.
So you have to treat?
Yes, you go to supervision. You go to supervision, but your feelings your feelings don't get a say so in this, not one little bit. Okay, the assumption is that we start where the client is, and our feelings should not play a role. The client is always what matters. When it comes to why do we seek supervision, why is there a code of ethics? It's always because of the client. Especially I've had it this week with a couple of my own clients. So according to the code of ethics, what comes first, your job or your client?
Your clients.
Your client. In the real world, it might be my job, okay? But for the code of ethics and for the test, it is your client. It is your client. And remember, this is not a test of your value as a social worker. This is a test of, do you know what our values are and what we teach? Okay. So then, we're going to start with this one. And if you've done this one already, be nice. Okay, so the chat box is open. If you're not sure how to use the chat box, there's a line. It looks like a text box. If you will open that conversation, your chat box will open. And I really would like if you would please, either you can speak the answer, you can type it in, either way, but be brave. Be brave.
Pam?
Yes.
Okay, before we start, I guess just more clarification.
Please.
So you're saying on the test, I mean, I don't know if there's any like CBT and DBT, but you're saying mostly when it comes to intervention, it's going through those stages of like engagement, assessment, planning, implementation.
So you will see questions on the test about what orientation to use. That is definitely true. Okay. So it talks about a client, and we'll come across some of those today. But yes, it will. What you're looking for is it will say, according to Carl Rogers, what would you do? So yes, you will see those. You do need to know your orientations. Yes, that is heavier on the LCSW than it is on the LMSW. Okay, but yes, you do need to know those theorists. So like when it comes to Carl Rogers, the words you look for are warmth, caring, congruency, all those things. You might see a Gestalt question or two. Gestalt talks about the empty chair is his technique. So yes, you will see some of those. Yes. Anyone who's taken the test before care to share about how many of those you saw?
For me, I took the test before. There's a lot of questions about like Pam said, like what orientation, like they'll use the person who like invented the what's where I'm looking for. The person that
Orientation.
invented the orientation or the technique, and then you'll have to figure out which one, like which step within those techniques you have to use. There's questions about that on the exam.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
No Pam, you said where do we put our answers again? This is my first day.
There's a chat box. So on your home screen, there is a box, and it looks like a text. And if you open it, says either open or close text.
I would just see my answer because I don't see it. I just see type here to research. No.
And let's see here.
Open wait. Is that, I don't know.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to my screen. Okay, so we'll stop sharing that. So I'm going to switch. So do you see, let's see. Do you see yourself on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you see my mouse moving?
Yeah.
Okay, so if right here, it says clear, close conversation,
Okay.
open
Okay.
conversation. Okay,
Okay.
so if you open conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and you can type your answers in there, or you can share
Okay.
your answers with me. Either way.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
So then we were at. Let me go back to sharing that one. Okay, so then a 171, a family member of a 54-year-old client tells a social worker she is concerned about the client's behavior. The family members describe the clients as having greater difficulty in managing activities of daily living and demonstrating a decline in memory and thought processing. What conditions should the social worker assess first? Okay, they're 54. They're having some decline in thought memory. I'm sorry, some decline in daily activities and having some decline in memory. What should you assess first? I see some D's. Okay, so explain to me why D. Be brave. Come on.
Because I would say because
oh,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I would say because she's having memory issues that could lead to dementia, neurocognitive disorder.
Okay.
Yes, and she's having.
Anybody else?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
hey, Miss Pam. This is Bria.
Go ahead, Bria. What?
I put a D for mild neurocognitive disorder because for one, he's 54 years old, and the main
Excuse me. What? He's 54. He's what? Oh, you're out of my group, Bria. That's it. He's not old. I'm 54.
Mm-hmm.
But still, and one of the main symptoms are a decline in memory and thought processing.
Okay,
So,
fine. You're right, but he's still not old. Okay, I just want to clarify that.
and they said, what we think first. When I see 54, I was like, okay.
Exactly. Okay, so why not schizophrenia?
It wasn't what I would have chosen first because he's not presenting any symptoms of schizophrenia.
Okay, he's also old to have schizophrenia, right? We mostly see schizophrenia develop between the ages of 15 and 40 at the most. So 54 to have a first, I guess, psychotic break was a lot old. There's nothing in there that suggests he uses alcohol, and nothing in this is he uses anxiety. So even if you know the answer and D is correct, I want you to go back and rule out the others so that you can really know that that one is correct. That takes out some of the doubt when you're walking away. Okay, good. Number 170. A social worker is assisting a client with problem resolution. The problem has been identified, solutions have been explored, pros and cons have been considered. What is the next step toward resolving the problem? This is a typical social work problem method for solving methods question.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do? Have an A.
Okay, I forgot how I got to the answer box before.
Okay, Sophia, why A?
I did timeline.
Hi, Pam.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes, why A?
because the problem has been identified, so we know what the problem is. Solution has been explored, and we're thinking about the pros and cons. So based on that, now we have to develop specific goals to start creating our objective to get to resolve the problem.
Perfect. Okay. So going down that method. So then where are we?
We are
Okay.
in
So the problem has identified, right? We did our assessment, we identified the problem. In the planning, we did like the pros and cons, right? So then we're going to develop the specific goals, and then we're going to intervene after that. So that's exactly what we're going to do, is follow that step. Perfect. Okay. So establish a timeline for resolution. We do that?
How are they confused about that?
Not yet. Not yet. Once we plan in that full planning stage, we're going to come up with the, you will do this goal by this time, right? Okay. Highlighting the client's strengths, that's D. Wouldn't that come either in the engagement or the assessment process? Okay. Identifying termination, that's way down here. So we're not there yet.
Pam,
right up here. Yes.
Pam, I'm still a little confused about it being A. Okay.
So I'm going to read the question again. A social worker is assisting a client with problem resolution. Okay. The problem has been identified. Solutions have been explored. So that's part of my assessment. Okay. They've come in. I've asked them the questions. So they've been explored. Pros and cons have been considered. Okay. That's that early planning. We could do this. We could do that. We could do this. Okay. So now that we have decided what we're going to do, we're going to develop specific goals. So our client comes in and they tell us that they are in an abusive relationship, and they come in very ambiguous. They're still not sure whether or not they want to leave. Okay, so we've talked about the problem. The problem is she's in an abusive relationship. What do I do next? So we've rated the pros and cons. If you stay, this will happen. If you leave, this will happen. Kind of weighing them down. So now she's decided what she's going to do. She's decided, okay, for now I'm going to stay. Then I'm going to help her develop specific goals based on what she has decided.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one of the ones that once we would develop those specific goals, that's an intervention process. Okay, so we're going to take the information and then go back down through. And again, if you like the acronyms, it's fine. I will never tell you not to do what works for you. We'll just tell you that I like this is what we've all been taught since day one.
Yeah, I don't use acronym.
And we just stick with that. Okay.
Okay.
We'll look at 168. That's one of those community questions. A social worker is interested in the social cohesion of a particular community. What should the social worker assess first? Okay. And in the community, we do have, and if you go back to watch one of my videos on community assessment, or, we can talk about that in our next individual, but there, of course, there are steps. However, the first question is the first question no matter what. No matter what I'm in, if I'm planning an agency, if I'm doing a community work, it's still the first question, which is to what?
Assess.
Exactly. Gather, probe, figure out. Okay? So then, what should she do first? She's trying to create social cohesion, togetherness in that community group. What should she do first?
D,
the social mobility within the neighborhood. Explain that to me. What does that mean?
Well, to me, that would mean that in order to first, so social cohesion is when you want everybody in the community to be together and try to understand what's happening. So in order for the social worker to assess, you would need to first talk to people and try to understand what they need. So in order to do that, I think you have to do social mobility, which is where you get everyone together, try to figure out what are areas that need to get improved within the neighborhoods, and then you go on from there.
So that would make sense, but I think in this term, social mobility is how they are moving. we track mobility. What we know when it comes to social work, children who move more often don't do as well. Even if they just move to the apartment down the street, so mom can save more money. So mobility is how often they move. So tracking mobility in this situation would be who's moving in, who's moving out, how often are they staying. So that probably wouldn't work when you're trying to develop cohesiveness because these people keep moving in and out. Okay. What about the high school graduation rate? Does that look at social cohesion? Nope, it doesn't. Okay. And the answer is B. You are correct. The level of trust. Okay. So one of the things that I teach, or we teach Desley and teaching people how to pass a test. If you have no idea what social cohesion means, you're going to try to word match. So when I think of cohesive, I think like of people being cohesive, or tape is cohesive, right? Okay. So then I'm looking at the level of trust. Yes. Exactly. So, and I tell you, and I'm sure every other tutor and every other program has told you that the answer is in the question. Go back to the question and tell me where you see that. So the level of trust, because I know they're looking for cohesive. So there are two clues in there. A is the first question. Ding, ding, ding. Gather, assess, look for more. B, if I'm choosing my answer, go back to the question and prove it to me in the question. There we go. Okay. Look at 167, guys. A hospital social worker assists a patient who is scheduled for discharge. The patient and the family feel the patient needs more time to regain strength before returning home alone. What should the social worker do next? A, educate the family on assisting with patient care. B, arrange a meeting to discuss aftercare options. C, inform the patient and the family about the hospital rules. Or C, ask hospital administration to extend the discharge plan. So normally what I teach is you're going to rule out the two that make no sense whatsoever. And I think all of you have taken the test before, a practice test. You do realize that there are two that just make no sense. Like, oh my gosh, this just can't be right. Okay. So then the patient and the family feel the hospital patient needs more time to regain strength before going home. What should she do next? D, ask the hospital administration to extend the discharge date. Are they going to do that without good reason?
No.
No. Hospitals are for profit, and you don't get to lay up in that bed for free unless you got a really good reason. Not going to happen. Okay. So then, inform the patient and family about the hospital rules. Now, that's an option. I can say to you, these are the rules of the hospital. You have to go. That is an option. So let's keep that in. Arrange a meeting to discuss aftercare options. That's an option because if they can't stay here, they could do something else. Or A, educate the family on assisting with patient care. Is the family interested in patient care? They feel that the patient and the family feel they need more time to regain strength. They didn't ask you about how to help for him at home, did they? So now I'm down to B or D. So B or C. So what's the best choice between B and C?
I think it's B.
You are correct. How come?
Well, I know that when the patients in the hospital, the hospital social workers' jobs usually, in the beginning, they plan for discharge, and they're not going to change the discharge date, unless something drastic would happen.
So
the only one here that would make sense to help would be B, so they could discuss some aftercare options for the family and the patient.
That is the best question, because I could just tell the parents and family, I'm sorry, you got to go, right? Because that's the hospital policy. I'm sorry, you got to go. But that's not what we want to do, right? That is not very social worker of us. So what we want to do is arrange with the family. I hear that they feel like they're not ready to take care of him at home. I hear that. But I also have to understand that the hospital won't let him stay. So let's meet and look at what our other options are. Okay?
And I think
So,
PM too, oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I think when I look at the question where it talks about, schedule for discharge, and if I was supposed to go back and just look at what really matches with that, it would be discharge matches with aftercare option, and that's what we need to discuss because the client feels that they need more time, so they need to have that meeting to discuss the aftercare, which is option, which is more like assessing to see what through communication.
You got it. And I truly think that, so this next question is still an assess question, is it not? They want to go home. They're not ready to go home. The hospital says you got to get the step in. So our goal is to kind of intervene there and figure out what's going on. And I don't know if you've ever worked in a hospital or even been in a hospital. What are the odds of them extending your discharge date? Slim to none. You are better. Go home. You cannot stay here. We don't care where you go, but you cannot stay here. That's more than anything. 165. A social worker administrator in a public service agency is assessing how to provide services in response to an influx of multi-immigrant groups. What is the social worker administrator's primary task? Primary task is still a first, right? So what is the first thing she needs to do? They've suddenly got a huge influx, a lot of people of different immigrant groups. So we've got some Hispanics, we've got some Haitians, we've got some Dominican Republics, we've got some people from Africa. All of a sudden, we've got this huge influx of multiple immigrant groups. What should I do first? What is my first job? Rule out. What two can it not be? Sorry, guys. Close my window. It's just getting a little chilly in here. Okay. So then, I see an A. Okay. So then, what? Okay, Bria, tell me A then. Tell me why.
Oh my gosh.
Come on, be brave.
Okay. I said I wasn't gonna do B because they're from a different ethnic group, but they don't need separate service, like separate two people to talk to them.
So let's stick with B. Okay, so establish separate service centers for each ethnic group. What are the odds that we're really going to find separate agencies that all do this?
Right. So I was like, I'm gonna take that one out. Then hiring agency staff for immigrant groups. And we already have staff, so the staff that we have already could work with them. So I wouldn't do that one either. So I just wind this down to A. Make sure they have all the services that they need. That's what I got.
Sophia said multiple immigrant. Say that again. Sophia, say it again. Just tell me.
Hi, Pam. I just think, just based on the way how you and I have been working together, I just felt that because we're assessing assessing to provide services in response to an influx of multiple immigrant groups. So I figure that because we're dealing with multiple immigrant groups, and I would match it to all immigrants groups. So ensuring coordinated services for all immigrant group, because if you try to provide service for each immigrant ethnic group, then it's going to be challenging because you may not be able to meet that needs. You know, those separate. So that's just the way how I look at it, and that would be the first thing that they would need to do.
You are correct. And I don't know if many of you live in an area where we have, numerous immigrant groups come in. I'm from South Florida. So we had, people who were from, Cuba, but still there were like, many different ethnic groups in Cuba. And so just because they're Cuban didn't mean I could get one person who speaks Spanish who would be able to work with his people. So really to try to find a person for each group, it just seems it's not feasible in most cities. Okay. And D, encouraging immigrants to assimilate into a larger society. That goes against our code of ethics. Remember, we are very, very happy that we have people who have a different ethnic background. However, we are very aware also there is no way that I can know everybody's ethnicity. I just can't. I'm human. I just can't. But it is our job, if we have someone of an ethnicity or a race or a background that we're not comfortable with, it's our job to educate ourselves. That is our job. Okay. However, I've seen the question on the test. If you're offered a case and the family speaks primary Spanish and you do not speak Spanish, it is unethical for you to take the case. Now, most of us live in an agency, work in an agency where that's not an option. You have to take the case because your boss said so and you're trying to figure it out. But just in general, that is something what so that's something in general that we should be aware of. 162, lithium. What's that used for, guys? 162.
See?
Bipolar 1. Okay, I'm going to challenge you. There's between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2.
Is it the duration of it?
Oh, you got it. Now tell me more.
Okay, so for bipolar 2, I want to say within 4 days, and then bipolar 1 within 7 days.
So you got it. So bipolar 1, I have to have a full-blown manic episode for at least a week. That's 5 to 7 days. And then, of course, we know the higher the highs, the lower the lows, right? And then in my bipolar 2, I'm going to have 2 to 4 days of hypomania. What does that mean, anybody? What's hypomania?
That's where you're not a full-blown manic, but you're on the happy side. But whereas with mania, your judgment's way off. You actually, most of them need to be hospitalized because they're a danger to themselves or other people with the mania. But with the hypomania, you're happy.
Okay.
A little above happy.
Yeah, and people still might notice. It's not an unnoticed one. People would still notice if you're in a hypomanic, like, wow, have you noticed like every Friday Pam is great? I mean, and not just because it's Friday, she's just like really happy on Fridays. Anybody ever treated or seen anyone with a full manic episode?
I have.
What did it look like?
Well, a couple times they were actually funny, but it's not funny. But this man, he was an older gentleman, and he was actually incarcerated, but he was very, speaking very quickly. He was flirting with all the nurses, winking.
Mm-hmm. He didn't pull his genital parts out?
No,
That's common. Hypersexuality is very common in a full-blown manic episode. I wasn't trying to be inappropriate. That's just very common. Very common. Okay.
But he was and then he would tell stories that were actually funny. That's why I'm saying it was actually funny, but it's not funny, you know. So but once he got medicated, of course, then he geared down a little bit, and then he was sent out actually to the hospital. He was declared incompetent by the courts and then sent out for treatment from the jail.
So you got it. So that hypomania is really you are, you know, you are, if you've ever seen anybody in that full episode, you know, very bizarre things, not needing sleep for 3 days, 4 days, racing episodes. There's a snippet I show in my class from, oh gosh, what's that TV show? Can't remember now. One of those like awful TV shows on Netflix. And they are, the mom comes home in a full manic episode and she decides to redecorate the kitchen. So she's like taking a sledgehammer and you know, putting holes in the walls, and she's taking all the cabinets out. She's going to destroy all the cabinets and rebuild. And that lasts for like 2 or 3 days. And then she goes to bed and she can't move. Like she closed the door and she can't move. So just full blown manic episodes.
And the other thing too is a spending of money.
It is money you don't have. Yes.
And multiple phone calls, one call after another.
Because you're in that full-blown hypermanic state. Pressured speech, but like it just like can't come out. So that's pressured speech. You got it. So if you look at this, you'll see my average. We all have some normal, right? All. However, then most of us have some, you know what? Okay, so this whole coronavirus thing, if there's anybody who's not had a little depressive cycle right here, I'd be a little surprised. Okay, it doesn't mean we're full-blown depressed. It doesn't mean we can't function. It just means like, whoa, this really threw us for a loop. Okay, so imagine though, someone who's already got then a full-blown bipolar disorder, that's going to throw them for a major loop. Okay. On the other hand, if they're in a manic episode, they're going to be buying everything in the store. So, and if the guy says, "I'm sorry, ma'am, you can only have 2," she's going to have a fight because she wants more than 2. And lithium is the drug of choice. Exactly on that one. Okay. Good, guys. Good. Okay. Let's see here. Let's look at 158. A social worker meets with a client to complete a biopsychosocial assessment. I don't think that's me, is it? A social worker meets with a client to complete a biopsychosocial assessment. The social worker also speaks with the client's parents and probation officer to gather additional information. What term describes the social worker's actions? Is that data triangulation, client debriefing, historical checking, or an audit trail?
Now, first, I'm saying D.
It is actually A. That is a social work. That's actually a research term, and you do know that part of your code of ethics says you're always supposed to research. That would normally what we see that term, but it's checking with 3 different sources. That gives us validity of what's going on. Okay, so ask this person, check with this person. Okay, I'm sure none of your clients have ever lied. A few of my clients have lied in the past, so you know, just in case. Let's see. I like this question. You've probably seen it before. It's a pretty common question. 152. An adolescent who's been living with her 23-year-old boyfriend for 6 months calls a crisis hotline at 2 a.m. requesting assistance. She claims that her boyfriend evicted her because she might be pregnant. She'll be 18 in 2 days. The adolescent says she has no place to go. What does the social worker do first? Now, first I'm thinking assess, 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 but above this one, before assess becomes safety. So how do I ensure that she is safe? You can unmute yourself and be brave.
Even though she will be 18 in 2 days, I think you still have to obtain the court order for the emergency foster care placement because she's not 18 yet.
Well, let's see here. How long is it going to take me to get that foster care order?
Yeah, that's true.
Hold on. Let's see here. Chelsea, are you in the group?
What was that?
Yes.
Chelsea, you work for Child Protective Services. Can I get that in 2 days?
No, it's going to take a while, like a week or two.
Yeah, so by then she'll be 18, right?
Yeah.
So what would you do, Chelsea?
I would contact the youth shelter.
Okay. Because
that's a quick placement for her.
Yeah. And because she'll be 18 in 2 days, that's the quickest thing we can do. There's everything else on there. Notify the police of her boyfriend's action. What did he do?
He just evicted her.
He evicted her. So, and truth is, and you read way more into it, you can't evict anyone without 28-day notice. But I want to send her back there.
No.
Nope. Okay. Is there anything in the question that suggests that she even has parents? Nope, there's not. There's not. So we don't even know if she has parents. Remember, you cannot read anything more in the question that's in the question. I don't even know if she has parents. All I know is she'll be 18 in 2 days. If I can put her someplace for the next 2 days, then even at that point, we can look at if she wants to be in foster care. We can sign her into foster care at 18. We can do lots of things, but she'll be 18 in 2 days. And the expedient thing to do is to really just put her in a youth shelter. Okay, thanks. Okay. 150. What instrument is most likely to be used by social workers in the initial assessment of families? D is the global section, the GAF. That's in the DSM-4, and we don't even use that anymore. An eco map. Oh, okay, let's see who. Jasmine, what's an eco map?
An eco map is where you basically, like, in your initial session, you ask clients like about their like history and their families and things of that nature.
You got it. You got it. An eco map is based on Bron van Bremer and his ecological system. Good job. Thank you.
You're welcome.
His ecological model says that we are definitely, our lives are affected by all of these things around us. Our micro, our meso, exo, macro, and chromosomal systems. So that's our ecological system. So for example, again, I'm going to throw in chron every time I can. Okay, so would that not be up here in our chromosome system? Things that just change? It affects my microsystem, does it not? I don't have any control over that. Yes, I can wash my hands, and yes, I can keep equal distance, but this is still really way out there. Okay. So what he talks about is things in our ecological system that affect all of us on a daily basis. So then, based on that, then he came up with this lovely eco map. And his eco map is people who are in our ecology. How many of those mean college professors made you do one of those? Yes, we enjoy making life difficult.
Those are horrible.
Not horrible. What did you think is so horrible? What made you think it's so horrible?
Like I had to do it in school, and it had to go back to 3 generations.
Oh, no. That was a genogram. That's by Murray Moen.
Genogram, you're right. My bad.
Yes, that is
so
Spanish.
Pam, I guess, okay, I'm glad you said that. So my thought is the eco map is like your support system. Who do you have that
currently
in your group? And then the genogram is more of your generations. Is that correct?
Exactly. Genogram is by Murray Bowen. He believed in intergenerational transition, intergenerational information. We brought that stuff down. And many of us in this group know that there are so many things that we do that we're not really sure why we do it, just because mom and them did. Okay, that's intergenerational transmission. He talked about like anxiety and our emotional health, but even when it comes to physical things, many of you, do you not cook the same Sunday or Easter dinner that your mom did? Grandma, somebody, you just passed it down. That's what Murray Bowen said, okay? However, my eco map is you can do it with a person or you can do it with a family. And the eco map really is just kind of looking at what's going on in our family. Okay.
For the genogram, doesn't it show patterns of behavior too in the relationship?
It does. It does. So if I don't know if that mean professor made you do one of those too, but for my students, when I tell them the genogram, and these are both assignments, it is many times very painful because they have to go back and ask grandma or somebody kind of some things in their family. And we're looking for patterns of dysfunction, patterns of drug use or diabetes or any of those things. And many times it opens up some skeletons that they were not ready to hear. So I've never had in my class. You do not have to share the detail in the class. I'm not making my students share their whole life in front of everybody. What we're looking for when I teach it is to make sure you understand what the lines mean. Okay, so you should be able to look at an eco map or genogram and be able just to kind of know what those lines mean. In general, the thicker the lines, the better the relationship. If you're doing a colored ecogram in color, blue always equals violence. Red is a bad relationship, and green is a good relationship. The arrows denote whether it's coming or going. So in this eco map, we're looking at, so if it's going, that means that they're giving more to this relationship than they're getting. Okay. So in this one, again, the sister-in-law is giving them a lot. The lines here many times mean, so this one is tension, stressfulness. Well, we know in general, the stronger the line, the better the relationship. Does anyone use these in practice?
I've never used one in practice, but when I used to teach PATH classes for potential foster parents, we had them do it like the very first session.
Okay.
I know that MFT normally use that a lot because I have a friend that she's a MFT and they tend to use that a lot.
Okay. I think in general, especially if you have I'm a visual learner when it comes to that. So especially if we have relationships, and I don't know about in your families, but when I was in practice, we have like people who are play cousins, not really cousins, but still play a huge part in their life. So if I do an eco map and I kind of put it on the front of the chart, when they're talking to me, it makes it easier to remember who's who. So, you know, and then she says, well, Jenny did this and Bobby did this. And I'm like, whoa, especially the first couple of sessions, you're not really sure who everybody is. But I can go back to my genogram and my eco map and kind of look at what she said. And I've done it many times in an initial session just to kind of write it out so I know who's who and what kind of relationship it is. So next week when she tells me, well, you know, cousin Bobby, you know, he came over, and I can look back and say, wow, I thought you didn't like cousin Bobby. So I find it to be a very useful tool when it comes to working with families. Okay. Some of those things you learned in school really aren't so bad. Just saying. So that's your eco map. And since we're here, your genogram then, like I said, that is generational. Murray Bowen, he's the one that talked about those, again, intergenerational patterns. Okay, in your eco map, many times you're looking at patterns. Okay. So as you see, this is the family of, and I'm not a Star Wars fan, I do not know. I think that's Star Wars. Luke Skywalker. Yeah, Star Wars Luke Skywalker. It's kind of a joke, but it looks like who's who and the same thing. The relationships are the same. Red means not a good relationship. Greens means good. And then if you see those blue ones always means violence. Okay. So then, 150, what instrument was you most likely to use? And that is an eco map. Okay. Family sculpting. Who would do that? What's theorist? Bowen? Because
he focuses on like intergenerational trends, and that would be something he would use as one of his techniques, family sculpting.
He might. Most of the time I'm looking at my strategic family therapist. Like Don Jackson's one of the names. But in those, what you look for really in the therapy session, you know, mom and dad and the kids had a fight, and the therapist really might say, so place them where they were. Okay, so when dad and you and dad were fighting, and, you know, put dad where he was and put mom where she was, and then, you know, where was your sister or where were you? It kind of gives you an idea of the family function with regards to proximity. So that's something we might use many times also. Okay. Good, guys. Really good. And again, if you have questions as we go along, this is recorded. Go back to watch it. I do speak really fast. I try to get as much information as I can in here. But feel free to go back and watch it. And always ask me questions. Okay. 148 is one of those program evaluation questions that everyone hates. That's my macro approach. Okay. What is the first step in setting up a program evaluation? So again, no matter what it is, a first step says ding, 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 ding. Assess, evaluate, gather, probe. Rule out. Designing the method. What?
C.
Assessing the available resources. So then, if I assess the available resources without determining my goals, what am I assessing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So when I'm looking at
it's a first question. It's a first question.
It
That's
is.
why I think.
But but is assess the only first question we look for? There are lots of other things that allows me to assess other than that word.
Okay. So you determine the goals and
Determine. Yes. Someone else said it already. Yes, determine. Okay. So I'm setting up a program evaluation. That means that first of all, if I'm doing a program evaluation, am I using a formative or a summative approach?
Formative.
Formative, right?
Summative. Summative is at the end. I'm setting up a
the
program.
evaluation. Evaluating. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, Jesus.
So I'm setting up a program evaluation. Yeah. Okay, so the goal of that would be to use a formative at the very end, right? Yeah. However, to use a formative to evaluate it, I have to have something to determine how to evaluate it, right? So I'm going to evaluate it on the goals and the objectives. Objectives, yeah. Which would be a formative, right? Because that's what happens in the middle is when I'm determining those goals and objectives. Okay. Yes. So in a program evaluation, most of you work for an agency, you have your own business. At some point, you have to decide how well you're working, right? Is this functioning? Is this working? So if I'm going to set up an evaluation to see how well my agency worked, don't I need to determine the goals and objectives first? Okay, and I'll share with you. So when I decided to start my business with academic coaching, the goal is for me is to my mission statement talks about providing reasonable, affordable tutoring to help people, to help professionals pass the licensure exam. That is the goal of my agency. So then, if I don't determine the goals or the objectives, I can't measure. So, I've been doing this a year and a half. So at the end of the first year, if I said, wow, I did a great job, and someone asked me how I know, if I don't have any goals or objectives to measure, how will I know? So I keep records, I keep stats. The goal is that if you follow the tutoring program, that you will do well. You'll improve your score. You'll pass the test. That is the goal. But I can't tell you at the end of the year that I met my goal unless I have something to measure it by. So all agencies, all programs have goals and objectives. They are measurable. Remember, goals and objectives are always measurable. That's important. Okay.
So if you formulate, then you have to assess the first time the needs.
So formulating is in the middle of it. Summative is at the end.
Okay.
Good number 145. I think that one's interested. A person who is a college student expresses ambivalence about his sexual orientation during a session with a social worker. Despite having always dated women, the client now feels attracted to men. He is distressed and wants to better understand these feelings. What should the social worker do? What do you do? I'm going to refer the client to a social worker who specializes in sexual orientation issues. No, I'm the best. I'm the best. No. Explain that homosexuality is not a choice. Did he ask me that?
No.
Did he ask me what I thought about him being gay? He didn't ask me that. Okay. Explain the relationship between the client's concerns and his sexual identity. D, explore with the client how his family will react to a same-sex situation. Is there anything in that question that talks about his family?
No.
Do we even know he has a family? We do not. Very good, guys. It is C. Absolutely right. Okay. And again, So that was one where we just totally had to rule out. Okay. I'm not referring. I am the best. I'm the best.
Okay.
And maybe I'm not as experienced in sexual orientation issues. And if the option was SIG supervision, then I would. But that's not an option. But I am not referring out. I am the best. And again, did he ask me what I thought about homosexuality? Is there anything in that question where he asked my opinion? Nope. So I'm not going to explain to him it's not a choice. Nope. And again, for our code of ethics says it doesn't really matter what you think as a social worker. You don't change your values. You are who you are. But when it works for our clients, it doesn't matter what you think. We're going to treat them with dignity and respect and start where the client is. And 4, then explore how the client's home would react. Again, nothing in there to prove that. Nothing in that question. If that's the one thing you learned tonight is, what is the question asked me and what can I prove in the question? Not based on my prior knowledge, not based on some assumptions. What can I improve in that question, especially with the vignettes? Okay.
Got a long ways to go with these
but once you learn it, I promise you, you will understand how it works.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not going to pretend it's easy. I'm not going to pretend it is not an easy test, but it's doable. It is doable.
Thank you.
Oh, let's look at this one. 140. In a couples therapy session, a husband says that he expects his wife to take care of the household chores because that's what his mother did. The wife exhibits frustration. The social worker assists the couple in understanding their functions as a unit. What framework is a social worker most using? A structural family, self-psychology, solution-focused, or psychoanalytic? Who's that just answered?
Me.
Who's me?
Oh, Jasmine.
Thank you, Jasmine. Okay, Jasmine. So what did you choose?
I chose structural because structural is based on hierarchy. And in this situation, hierarchy would be the main idea because the husband is saying that he expects the wife to do the chores because that's what his mom did. And that would mean that the hierarchy of her doing that, of him doing it, is kind of beneath him because that's not what he was used to when he was growing up.
Yes. So a structural family approach looks at boundaries and hierarchies. I always remember when it comes to structure, it has to do with your home. You know, in your home, do you not have a firm foundation? If you don't, your floor is sinking. Okay, you've got to have a very firm foundation. If you don't, it's going to fall apart. Your doors, most of your doors close. There are places. If mom and dad's door is closed, we don't go in. If the kids' doors are closed, we knock first. The structure is setting up the hierarchy and the boundary in the families. Okay. So a strategic family approach, we just work on that particular incident at that time. So strategic would be like a chess game. They did this, you move this way. We did this, you move this way. But structural, again, and you're absolutely right, Jasmine, setting up the hierarchy. This is based on how he grew up and what he believed the hierarchy of the home was. In those structural questions, you might see a question about a kid who's 6, who's misbehaving in school. And according to a structural family approach, what would he do? What would the social worker do? Is you'd go back to the family and you'd set up the rules and make sure that someone's in charge of the family. Okay. Again, strategic just works on those, the specific incidences that happen. Strategic and structural are both under the umbrella of the systems perspective of how everything is a system. A psychoanalytic approach, someone be brave. Oh, Mikhail, are you on this one?
That's
Mikhail?
where you go. It's sorry.
I don't know if you're still there. Are you still there?
Is that Freud?
I don't think he's there. Okay. So a cyclonic approach, what would that look like?
That would look like when you're trying to get to the root of why you're behaving why you behave the way how you behave, but it goes back to, I think it's Sigmund.
Okay,
That's
Sigmund Freud. He would look at your unconscious beliefs. He would look at things that you were unaware of. He would look at the defense mechanisms, your id, ego, and superego, all of those things that would belong to Sigmund Freud. Okay. Solution focused. What's that one?
Is it problem solving?
Is that the one with the magic question?
Yeah, yes! That's the miracle question. If you woke up tomorrow and things were different, what would it look like? That's exactly it. That's exactly it. So when we talk about, go ahead.
And that's short term, right?
It is short term and quickly.
Brief.
Yes.
Brief there.
Yes. So when we talked earlier about interventions, and so these are what an intervention question most likely would look like. So they're not asking you what you would do. They're asking you based on what happened in the question, what theorist did you use? Does that make sense?
Pam, can you please, yes, can you please give an example of a structural family where, because I know that you said if you move one way, then something will move another way. So if you could just give it,
That's
explain that.
strategic. That's strategic.
I mean, strategic. Sorry,
Okay,
strategic.
yes.
Can you
So anybody give me some terms that would go with strategic family therapy?
Enactment.
Again?
Enactment.
Enactment. You would be. You got it. What would that look like?
Like you have a client or clients in session, and they reenact a situation that has happened, like at home or something like that, and you try to get an idea of what it looks like in front of you, so you'll have them reenact the situation in session.
You got it. And that would be that sculpting. We would use that, like what happened, and some psychodrama sometimes. You got it.
Yeah.
The things we're going to look for, good job. The things we're going to look for strategic are many times he'll give them that. The most common one is a paradoxical directive.
Okay.
What does that mean?
That means that you will allow the family. So it's like, for example, like if the couple is fighting and they cannot able to see their behavior, you would tell them to go home and behave in that way, so they can continue fighting, so they can eventually see that their behavior is whatever is the problem.
You got it. And sometimes we'd also call that prescribing the symptom, like whatever they came in to presented with, we'd tell them to go home and just to do it. Okay, so that's prescribing the symptom, because we know that, and we wouldn't use this to begin with. This is not an initial approach at all. This is we tried, and they just aren't getting it. So I'll say, fine, go ahead and smoke. Go ahead and fight. A question I've seen is a family comes in with a 16-year-old daughter who continues to smoke pot in the house. The therapist has said to them, set the rules, set boundaries. This is not acceptable. And they come back in the next week, and she's like, but she still keeps smoking in the house, and nothing has changed. So the therapist says, fine, just let her smoke pot in her house. Okay, so does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm.
No. So the goal is to repeat.
You think that's the what paradoxical?
That's what it is. Do absolutely the opposite, because that makes no sense. If the parents are not doing what you ask them to do or suggested that they do, they're not doing it, then fine, do whatever you want to do. Okay. Double bind, that's a paradoxical term. I'm sorry, that's a strategic term also. What is that one?
Before we go further, Pam, Going back to that question,
Mm-hmm.
can you explain the self-psychology? I read it all the time, but I never can understand it.
I can.
So
If you
maybe,
can we just stay here for a minute and I will go back to that.
okay.
But remind me, I will. I sure will. Okay. So my double bind, what's that?
When you have two messages that aren't meshing, like they're totally different from one or the other. So
Give me
if
an
you're
example.
saying, so if like a client comes to you and says, I don't know, like they don't have any money or stuff like that, but like you have like someone in their home doing something illegally that is giving them money, like it's two conflicting. Is that an example? It's like
It's
conflicting.
close. It's close. It's close.
What
So
about
what
this,
I
Pam?
go ahead.
I was going to give an example. I was thinking about if I think like with kids, if you're saying grades are very important, but
Mm-hmm.
then you're on the verge of being evicted, but you're saying you need to get a job. So you want them to have good grades, but you're also saying we need money to remain here.
You got it. You got it. So, or even, you're absolutely right. They're absolutely right. And what I've seen before is like a parent who's telling their kid, you've got to go to college, you got to go to college, you got to do this, and the kid says, okay, mom, the college, I need your information to fill up my FAFSA. And mom's like, I ain't sharing how much I make. Okay, so what's the kid supposed to do? It's like, you know what? You want me to go to college. You tell me it's important, but you're not willing to share your information for me to be able to apply for that FAFSA. Okay. So that's a double bind. It's like, I just can't win. Okay. Strategic is also known for its first and second order changes. Those sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First order changes are the ones that we put out in the beginning, that we pretend. And then when it comes to really those second order changes, are really, really have those changes. Okay. I think you both all these. The pretend technique we talked about. Okay. So that is the strategic family approach.
Thanks
And
for
when
picking.
you'll go ahead.
Thank you.
You'll know those because structure, again, structure is family. Structure is the home. Structure is what's going on there. So let's look at self-psychology. Okay, so that was one of the terms. That's a Freudian term. And sometimes we see ego psychology the same way as self-psychology.
Okay.
Those words are synonymous. So this is a neo-Freudian. That means it was kind of after Freud. And there were people after Freud who suggested that maybe the id and the ego did not have as much say-so as the ego did. So the ego psychology uses some specific terms. The goal is that the ego psychology really felt that the ego just did not, it wasn't that constant fight between the two of them. That it really was that the ego made the decisions, and then we learned to fill the needs of our ego. There are terms like twinning and mirroring. Do those sound familiar? It's not a biggie.
I think I heard 20 before, but this brain, you can't remember nothing. 54-year-old brain, like she says, old.
Oh, No, excuse me. My brain is 54, and my brain is not old. My body might be old, but my brain is not. So thank you. I'm not going there yet. Let's see. There's a whole concept of ego psychology in the 20. And I will send I will send that to you in an email, just because it's not a it's an you might, has anyone seen a lot of questions on there? He's not a biggie anymore. So it's by Heinz Koltz, and what he said is that his theory basically was that essential to understanding self-psychology are the concepts of empathy, self-object mirroring, idolizing, alter ego, twinship, and tripolar self. The self-psychology was mainly used with a psychodynamic theory, and what it said was that our ego was built not just based on our id and our superego, but it was its own kind of space. And all these things learned, and like twinning was
I always
your
read
alter
it,
ego.
I just never can understand it when I read it.
He's just not a biggie. Anybody who's taken the test before, have you seen a lot of those ego psychology tests? Questions?
I only saw like ego satanic and ego dystonic, but that was it.
Which has nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
So what I always suggest is the ones I don't see a lot. We'll come back to those right before the test.
Okay.
So that's when you've kind of learned all the big stuff, and then we'll come back to some of those things.
Okay.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay.
Okay. Okie dokie, guys. Anything else? And I can send you this link if you want. I'll put this in the chat box. I mean, this is just, so despite whatever your teachers told you about not using Wikipedia, it's true. Don't use it for a test. But when it comes to like really fast and easy, to our research paper, but when it comes to looking at something pretty quickly and in terms that make that something we can all understand, it's a really good tool for that. Okay, it's in the chat box. Okay, so if you have not been in a group with me before, when I finish, there will be in this same chat, the video will be there. This video will be on YouTube about a month from now, but it's only available to you guys right now. So it will be there. If you right-click it, you can save it. But if not, in about 30 days, it'll be on YouTube. And I usually date it, so you'll know which one it was. Okay? Are we good, guys?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for taking part. Thank you for taking part in your very busy lives. And, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. One of the things about Maslow, he always says, is we move up and down the chart. That we might have been at the top last week thinking, yeah, I got self-esteem. I'm taking this test. I'm good. And now we're like at the bottom going, okay, I need to wipe my butt. So just is what it is. It just is what it is. And you guys are on the front line, so you don't get to fall apart in front of your clients. You don't get the option of with your clients, because you're the heroes, right? You're world changers. Okay? They're depending on you. Thank you very much. I'm pretty sure you all have my phone number. I cannot promise you I will answer, because I really am still very, very busy. But I do, especially if you're working on a client, a session, and you just really, if something comes up in a question or something you're stuck with, I do not do the supervision for licensure. I just don't have time, and I think there are lots of other people who can do that, so I do not do that. But I'm really good about being a mentor, and if you have something you're just stuck with, or in case you're like, I don't know what to do, or any of those things, it's really okay to give me a call. I don't mind that at all.
Thank you.
Or text, probably, because I probably won't answer your call. Sorry. Okay. It's been a pleasure, guys. Feel free to ask me any questions. And if you're not scheduled with me this week, I'll see you in the future. Please be safe. Please be safe.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.